are looking at the three zones of the Beis Hamikdash. The Beis Hamikdash followed the design of the Mishkan. The Mishkan had three zones. There was a courtyard, which was an outer area where the Mizbeach stood, where the korban place was surrounded by a netted wall. And then we have the actual building itself, and that had two parts to it, the Kodesh and the Kodesh Hakodoshim. And that was paralleled in the Beis Hamikdash, that the Beis Hamikdash had walled area that marked the Azara, where the Mizbeach stood and the korbanos were performed. Then we have the Kodesh, where the Mizbeach of the Ketores, the Shulchan, and the Menorah stood. And then we have the Kodesh Hakodoshim. And these three zones are not just reflective of the structure of the Beis Hamikdash, but we know that the Beis Hamikdash really is a representation of the soul, of the neshama. As the pasuk says, "Ba'asu mikdash v'shachanti b'soicham," that Hashem wants to dwell not in the physical structure of the Beis Hamikdash, but wants to dwell within each one of us, within our souls, within our avodas Hashem. So we gave a number of different perspectives, according to Chassidus, of what these three zones represent in a macro sense, in terms of the divine world, but then more specifically in relation to our own neshamas and our own avodas Hashem. So I'll just run through because it's important to set the stage for tonight's shir, which will be focused on the Kodesh Hakodoshim, which was the epicenter, was the pinnacle, was the focal point of the Beis Hamikdash. But just to refresh our minds, and for those who were not here, just to really run through what the other two zones represent. So our neshama in the sense peripheral and our interaction world around us. The world our drinking, our sleeping, our exercising, our working, etc. We actually order of Hashem to that space in activities to a godly purpose. It means we take something which is innately mundane, not holy, and we elevate it to become holy. That's true with our interactions with the world, but that is also true within ourselves, because the Alter Rebbe describes in Tanya, we have two neshamas within inside of us. We have an animalistic soul and we have a godly soul. The animalistic soul naturally may have a predisposition to negative character traits towards indulgence in physicality and pursuit of materialism, etc. And what we need to do, like the korbanos, like the sacrifices, is to take that animal and to elevate it, that it becomes a korban to Hashem. So the courtyard really represents serving Hashem in the mundane. It represents serving Hashem with our interactions in the world for the purpose of refining that which is not innately holy and making it holy, be it our own animalistic selves or be it our interactions with the physical world. And that's why the kalim in the courtyard were of nechoshes, were of copper, because of the term nachash, the snake, which of course the snake is a representation of negativity. And what we do is we take that which belongs within the domain of the nachash and we make it part of a Beis Hamikdash, part of our service of Hashem. In general, that's the weekday. Most of our interactions during the weekday is not innately holy, and we're trying to bring moments of holiness into that time period. Then we have the Kodesh. The Kodesh represents our service of Hashem through that which is innately holy and spiritual. So whereas the courtyard represents our avodah of birurim, of refining and elevating the world, the Kodesh represents our service of Hashem, as its name suggests, Kodesh, through that which is holy. And that is, of course, Torah and mitzvahs, which is the expression of the neshama, the godly soul. So when we come to Torah and mitzvahs, we're no longer dealing with the animal inside us. That stays in the courtyard, like the animals. Here we're now serving God with our neshama through Torah and mitzvahs, which are into three pillars of Torah, Avodah Gemilas Chasadim. Torah is Torah study. Avodah is specifically the Karbonos, but in general, davening, prayer. And then we have the Gemilas Chasadim, acts of kindness and charity, and by broader extension, the mitzvahs that we do. This is not about taking something mundane, like our eating and drinking, and trying to make it holy. These things are innately holy. We're engaged in a holy activity. So the menorah represents the study of Torah, which is a source of light. The shulchan, which is really about physicality, represents gemilus chasadim, acts of kindness and charity, and mitzvahs. Mitzvahs all involve physical objects from this world. And the mizbeach of the Keteris, the incense altar, represents davening, represents tefillah. As the pasuk says, tikoi tefillasi keteris afanecha, that our prayers should go up to Hashem like keteris. So that really represents serving Hashem through Torah and mitzvahs. And that is really like the difference between Shabbos and the weekday. Whereas the courtyard is like the weekday, that which is not innately holy. The Kodesh is like Shabbos, where everything we do on Shabbos is innately holy. So that's the Kodesh and the Azar, the courtyard. And that's why the Kalim inside the Kodesh were all of gold or gold plate, as opposed to the copper in the courtyard. Because gold is a godly type of material, according to the Medrash. A certain luster and shine and quality to it. It doesn't tarnish, etc. And that represents something which is already refined and does not need further refining. So that is the Kodesh. And then we come to the Kodesh Hakodoshim, which is our topic tonight. And I'm going to put it up front, just at the very beginning, to put it into this perspective. If the Chatzar is about serving Hashem with our animalistic self and our interactions with the physical world to make it holy, and the Kodesh is about serving Hashem through Torah and mitzvahs, through things which are innately spiritual and holy, the Kodesh HaKadoshim is not about serving Hashem at all. It's not about doing anything. The Kodesh HaKadoshim represents the essence of who we are. So when we talk about the layers of the neshama, the layers of the soul, the most external level are the garments, the machshava, dibur, ma'aseh, the thought, speech, and action of a person, through which we really interact with the world around us. That's the courtyard. That's the most peripheral. As we come closer to our inner self, we have our seichel, our midos, our intellect, and our emotions. And for the neshama, the intellect is there for the study of Torah, to connect to Hashem with our minds. The heart, the seat of emotion, is there to serve Hashem with our love, our fear, our awe, our reverence. And that is the experience of davening, which is supposed to be an emotional service, avodah shebelev, the service of the heart. But none of that defines the essence of who we are. When we talk about the thought, speech, and action of a person, that is what they think, that is what they say, that is what they do. It's not who they are. And therefore, a person, no matter how they feel on the inside, can something very high, thought and act called levushim, garments, because you can change them on and off relatively easy. When we go deeper, yes, a person's ideas, their beliefs, their values, their feelings are more intimately related to themselves and who they are. But again, that is not the core essence of who we are. I have ideas. I experience feelings. But I am not my ideas, I'm not my feelings. So what am I then? That's what we call the etzem, the essence. And the essence, no matter how hard we try, is not something which is actually describable. It's not something we can actually describe. It's just the essence of what that thing is. And for a Jew, when we talk about the essence, when we talk about the essential core of the neshama, if you imagine, just like the Beis Hamikdash had 3 squares, imagine your neshama like 3 concentric circles as we're moving in to the very nucleus, to the DNA of what a Jew is, not about what a Jew thinks, not what about a Jew's ideas are, what his feelings are, what his thought, speech, and action is, how he behaves. What is the core DNA and the identity of a Jew? It's what the Alter Rebbe tells us in Tanya, in Perek Beis, "Nefesh hashenis b'Yisrael hi chelek elokam imam mamish." A Jew is a neshama, and the neshama is a piece of God, literally, mamish.
So does that mean everyone's etzem is the same?
Everyone's etzem is the same. We may be different on all the other levels. We may be different in our standing of the observance of Torah mitzvahs through the garments of the soul. We certainly can't compare ourselves to the emotional service of davening of tzaddikim, or to this intellectual service of the Tanoim, the Amoraim, the Rishonim, Talmidei Chachamim. When we get to the etzem, The etzem is the same for everyone because it is a part of God. It's a spark of divinity within us. It's our essential bond with our Kodesh Baruch Hu. And therefore, it's not about what we do. It's who we are. So that's what the Kodesh Hakodoshim represents. And then we're going to take this theme, this idea, and we're going to explore how this is reflected in different parts and aspects of the Kodesh Hakodoshim. Yeah.
Is the etzem the same as neshama?
Okay, so in a broad sense, the neshama, we could say, relates to etzem, but really the neshama has layers within it. And when we talk about the etzem, we're talking about that quintessential core of the neshama, which is referred to as the yechida. That's a name that we use to refer to it. But even beyond that, the Rebbe explains that even yechida is just a name. And just as a person's name is not the essence of who they are, we can't even give a name other than etzem just to say that that is the essence. That's the essence of the Jew, which is bound up with the essence of God. It's like the nucleus, correct? It's like the DNA. So correct. And this is talking about the deepest level of the neshama, which in the Lashon of Kabbalah is that it is the spark of the boire, the spark of the creator, enclosed within the spark of the created. Meaning this is where God and man, or God and the Jew, are absolutely united. It's the divine presence within us. And every Jew has that. And just as God is undefinable, this spark is undefinable. Just as God is absolute goodness, purity, and incorruptible, that spark within every single Jew without distinction is whole, complete, and incorruptible as well. So this idea that the Kodesh Hakodoshim represents the essence of the neshama, and therefore the essence of our bond with Hashem, we're going to see how that's reflected in different aspects of the Kodesh Hakodoshim and the kelim that were there. And when I say kelim, it was actually only one kelim. So let's start off with the Kodesh Hakodoshim in terms of avodah. The avodah in the courtyard was one of korbanos. Korbanos sacrifices, and that was involving the avodah inside the kodesh was the avodah of lighting the menorah, the avodah of placing the lechem apanim on the shulchan, the avodah of burning the ketores on the mizbeach of the ketores. What was the avodah done in the Kodesh Hakodoshim? Only on Yom Kippur. Whereas everything else, there was a daily avodah. And lechem apanim was once a week on Shabbos. The Kodesh Hakodoshim was only entered by the Kodesh Hakodoshim of the Jewish people, the Kohen Gadol, on Yom Kippur, which is the Kodesh Hakodoshim in time, into the Kodesh Hakodoshim, which is in space. Because just as we look at the Mishkan in terms of these concentric circles, in Klal Yisrael, we have the same as well. You have the Jewish people at large. From amongst them, you have the Kohanim and the Leviim who are Kodesh, and then you have Aaron, who is Kodesh HaKadoshim. So within our neshama, the essence of our neshama is the Kohen Gadol within inside of us. In time, you have the weekday, you have Shabbos, and then you have Yom Kippurim, which is called Shabbos, Shabboson, or also that it's the idea of Kodesh HaKadoshim. So we have that in time, space, and within the person as well. So before we get to Yom Kippur, the Aron stood in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. There was no avodah performed with the Aron. There was no temple service that was done with the Aron. The Aron was not about doing things. It wasn't like the Mizbeach where we burned korbanos or the menorah, which we lit the menorah. The Aron just stood there. There was nothing done with the Aron. Furthermore, in Beis Sheni, the Aron wasn't even there. Towards the end of the first Beis Hamikdash, when they foresaw that the Beis Hamikdash was going to be destroyed, the Aron was buried, was hidden in the tunnels underneath the Beis Hamikdash. And throughout the time of the second Beis Hamikdash, there was no Aron there. Because the moment we say there's a keli for something, when there's a vessel for something, we're talking about something that can be contained. In fact, you say, I've got a vessel for something, it means we're talking about something that can be contained within that vessel, smaller or larger, but ultimately we're talking about something that can be contained. When we talk about the essence of the neshama, this is not something which can be contained. It's not something which can be encapsulated in a type of keli or in a type of service, in a type of avodah. We don't need to do something to be connected to Hashem on that level. And therefore, when we talk about the Kalim, so the Aron, which stood there, was not a Kali, it was not about serving Hashem with the Aron. The Aron was the representation of this bond that we have with Hashem. Furthermore, as the Ramban says, that the Aron was the place from which the Shekhinah was revealed to the world. When Hashem spoke to Moshe, it was Mibein Shnei HaKruvim. Hashem spoke to Moshe from between the Kruvim on top of the Aron, and therefore, really, the Aron represents the revelation of Hashem's presence within the world. It's not about us serving Hashem, but it's about Hashem uniting with us. Furthermore, when we talk about the Kodesh Hakodoshim, it's a very interesting term which the pasuk in Malachim uses to describe the Kodesh Hakodoshim. It's also used in Chazal, that it is called Chadar HaMitot. It's called the bedroom. The bedroom. Imagine a home, right? When you talk about a husband and a wife, which of course we know is a metaphor which is used for the relationship between Hashem and Jewish people in the book of Shir HaShirim. In different parts of the home, you have guests, you have family members, right? And we connect on different levels. But the place where the union of husband and wife takes place in a way like the Torah describes, v'hayu lebasar echad, to become absolutely united and one, that is that private sanctuary, which is a sanctuary of exclusivity for husband and wife alone. And so too, that is what the Kodesh Hakodoshim is. The Kodesh Hakodoshim is the place where Hashem and the Jewish people are absolutely united like basar echad, like we are one. And that was the idea of the Kruvim. The two Kruvim, which of course faced one another, represented the relationship of Hashem and the Jewish people. When we take this idea a little bit further, so once we're talking about the Kruvim, bring up an idea of the Kruvim. So the Kruvim were angels, they had wings, and the wings were hovering over the Aron. And the Gemara discusses what was the face of the Kruvim. What did they look like? What was the face of the Kruvim? And the Gemara says that it's a Pnei Adam, that it's the face of a man. And the Gemara qualifies that it's not the face of a grown-up, but the face of a child, the face of a baby, the face of a child. And we know that every detail, particularly in the Beis Hamikdash, is integral. Why specifically were the Kruvim in the Kodesh Hakodoshim why did they have the face of a baby? The relationship that we have as a parent with a child is the most unique of all relationships. It's an innate, essential bond and love because they are part of us and we are part of them. Our relationship with a child is indestructible. It is unconditional. And it's just a matter of fact. When we engage with other people, our interactions with them, our friendships with them, etc., will be based on different qualities that they may have. Be it our work colleagues that we value because of their skills or their intellect. We value people because of their humor, because of their ability to carry conversation, because of their personality, etc., etc. But none of that applies when it comes to our children. When it comes to our children, it is a completely unconditional love. Taking it a step further, that's true with every child that we love or want. And therefore, it doesn't matter. I mean, yes, parents, we have expectations, we have values like that we would like to see them embrace and live with, etc. But at the end of the day, whilst we want that for them, no matter where they end up and whatever type of lifestyle they are living, that essential love is unbreakable. It's inseverable. Because like the Kodesh Hakodoshim, in that level, it's not about what you do, it is just who you are. It's that relationship, that bond, that just is. And whilst that's true with every child, it's most pronounced with a baby, right? We love babies. It's just, you see a baby, you love it. Why do we love babies? What have they done? What accomplishments do they have to speak of, right? They haven't graduated from law school or medical school yet. So they need us. That's true. They definitely need us, and they need our love to survive. That's definitely true. They're cute, they're innocent because of their essence. Because as a child gets older, we sometimes blur and we lose sight of that innate bond because we now have expectation. We now have expectation that you've got a mind, you've got a heart, you've got your behaviors. We expect certain things. Whatever it is, each family has their own expectations. And that can sometimes conflict or cloud the relationship because we focus on that and sometimes lose. But when it comes to a baby, we don't have that expectation. When it comes to a baby, the love of a baby is not because how well they did in school, not about how many mitzvahs they've done and how much Torah Baal Peh they've learned. It's not about anything other than this is my child. And therefore, that's absolutely unconditional. And that's why the face of the Kruvim was the face of the baby, because that ultimately is how Hashem loves us. It's a beautiful pasuk which we say in the Haftarah of Rosh Hashanah, Haben Yaki Ephraim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is talking about Ephraim. Who was Ephraim? Ephraim was the most rebellious of all of the Shvatim. When you talk about the idolatry that was rampant in the northern kingdom of Eretz Yisrael, Yeravam ben Nevat, we're talking about the tribe of Ephraim. Talking about the kid who was expelled from school after school after school after school. And what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu say? After everything has been said and done, Ephraim is my beloved child, and I think of him, and I'm filled with warmth in my insides. That's the essential bond that we all have with Hashem. Yes, Hashem, like a parent, has expectations. And that expectation is that we do have the Kodesh. We do learn Torah, the Menorah. We do daven, which is the mizbeach of the Keturis. That we do mitzvahs, which is the lechem, hapanim, and the shulchan. That we do try and work on refining our character, which is no matter, without distinction, as we say, without any difference between one neshama and the other, Hashem loves each one of us unconditionally, and Hashem loves each one of us infinitely and essentially. And therefore, in the words of the Alter Rebbe, when the Alter Rebbe defines the essence of what a Jew is, Aid, niter ken or niter vil, sein abgerissum von Elokus. A Jew cannot become separate from Hashem. A Jew in his heart of hearts does not want to become separated from Hashem, and on a deeper level, cannot, no matter what, cannot become separated from Hashem. That's the essential bond that we have. And that's the idea of the face of the Kruvim. Where else do we see this idea articulated? We see this in what was contained within the Aron. What was in the Aron? The Luchos. What was unique about the Luchos? So we've got, the Chassidus describes, there's two different ways in which the Torah was written down. There's the Torah the way it is written, ink on parchment, and then there's the Torah the way it was, Charus al Luchos, engraved into the stone. When we talk about writing on parchment, whilst the ink and the parchment fuse together, they may be stuck together and attached, but at the end of the day, they remain separate, and you could scrape it off. But when you talk about something carved into stone, minei ube, the letters are one with the stone. They're inseparable. You can't separate. So we've got different layers of ourselves and our Jewish identity. We have a level of our Jewish identity, which is through Torah and mitzvahs. And that is very much like the ink on parchment. It's something that we do. It's a service that we do. We connect to Hashem through our Torah study, through the mitzvahs that we do. But on the level of Kodesh Hakodoshim, the connection is like a letters carved into stone. That our Jewishness, our Jewish identity, our Yiddishkeit, our connection to Hashem is not about what we do. It's not something separate to ourselves, but it is who we are. It's through and through. It's something which is just our very essence of who we are. If we take this idea just a little bit further, so we mentioned in previous shir about 5 levels of the neshama. The lowest of the levels of neshama, the nefesh, which is really just about our functioning, our moving, our actions, etc. Our ruach is the emotional quality of the soul, the ability to experience emotion in the service of Hashem. We have the neshama, which is the intellectual capabilities of the neshama. Chaya, which is a deeper level of desire for connection to Hashem. And then we have the yechida, which is the essence of the neshama. Chassidus explains that these 5 levels of neshama correspond to the davening that we do each day. On a normal day, we daven 3 tefillos: Ma'ariv, Shachris, and Mincha. Shachris, Mincha, Ma'ariv, however you want to cut and dice it. Because on a regular day, we're really only in touch with what we would describe as the conscious levels of the neshama. The neshama being in our mind, in our heart, our intellect, and our emotions. But that deeper desire for connection to Hashem, that is something which we experience on Shabbos and Yom Tovim. We have an extra tefillah, which is Musaf. But there is only one day a year where we daven 5 tefillos. Yom shemechuyev. It's a day where we're obligated to daven 5 tefillos, and every tefillah takes us to a deeper and deeper connection to our Kodesh Baruch Hu. And on Yom Kippur, when we daven 5 tefillos, it is because it is a day that we have access, like the Kohen Gadol going into the Kodesh Hakodoshim on Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, we are like the Kohen Gadol, entering into the Kodesh Hakodoshim of our neshama, that essential bond that we have for Hashem. And that is reflected in the 5 tefillos of Yom Kippur, and specifically in the tefillah of Ne'ilah, which is that final one. As I think I mentioned maybe in this year or in another year, that comes Yom Kippur, and it comes like that stretch between after Musaf or between Mincha and Mincha time, you start to feel really hungry, a little bit shvach. Becomes Ne'ilah. I don't know about anyone here, but the furthest thing from our mind. When it comes Ne'ilah, it's like we've reached this completely new state of being where there's nothing else. There's just me and Hashem. And indeed, as Chassidus explains, that's the Ne'ilah, that we're closed in with this, in the Kodesh Hakodoshim, with us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu alone. And when we reach that type of experience, that's why Yom Kippur is called Achas Bashanas, that one day a year. But not just one day a year, but each one of us has the Achas inside of us. The Achas is that Yechida. The word Yechida means singular, or one and only. It's an exclusive relationship with Hashem, and that is something which you experience in Yom Kippur. It's not limited to Yom Kippur. There are other times, and we'll speak about that when that does become revealed. Some other ideas with regards to the Kodesh Hakodoshim. The Ramah says in his work, Oilas Tamid, that the Kodesh Hakodoshim measured 20 amos by 20 amos. So it's approximately 10 meters by 10 meters. And very interesting, whilst the Ramah is not known as a Makubal, as a Kabbalist, and does not write writings of Kabbalah, but he was obviously familiar with teachings of Kabbalah, and in this work he kind of alludes and mentions some of the ideas. And he says the reason the Kodesh HaKadoshim, I'll tell you just in his words, this is more words of Jewish philosophy. He says that Chassidus and discuss this idea, and Jewish philosophy talks about the idea of Ilah and Alo. Ilah means a cause, and Alo means an effect, a source and an outcome. And the Ramah says like this: the Chatzor, the courtyard of the Mishkan, of the Beis Hamikdash, is an Alul, but not an Ilah. It's an end result, it's an effect, it's a product, but it's not the source of anything further. The Kodesh, that is both an Ilah and an Alul, that it's a receiver and a giver. But the Kodesh HaKadoshim is the ultimate source. And he then says like this, that's why it was 20 by 20. The word Esrim, when spelled out in Lashon HaKodesh, has the gematria of Keser. Keser meaning the crown of Hashem. And Keser, as we know, when we talk about the divine spheres, when we talk about the worlds, this is talking about that which sits above everything. That which sits, the most transcendent levels of godliness is referred to as Keser. And that is what was manifest, that was revealed in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. One of the things we spoke about is that as you went into the Beis Hamikdash, going into the Beis Hamikdash was about obviously a physical pilgrimage, but it was also a spiritual pilgrimage as well. And the Beis Hamikdash was not on one single level; it was built on the incline of the mountain. So as you went from zone to zone, you had to climb a series of stairs. So when you went from the Har HaBayis into the Ezras Nashim, there was a series of stairs. When you went from the Ezras Nashim to the Azara, there was a series of stairs. And when you went from the Ezras Yisrael to Ezras Kohanim, there was the Duchan, which was a couple of stairs. And when you entered the Kodesh, there was another series of stairs. And the Rebbe explains that those stairs were a physical representation of the spiritual incline that we climb as we ascended. And interesting, one of the first times we have the mentioning of the side of Har HaBayis in the Torah is by Yaakov's dream. Yaakov, when he's leaving Eretz Yisrael to go to Lavan, he comes to Har HaBayis and he falls asleep. And when he wakes up the next morning, he says that Zeh Shar Shamayim, Yeh Beis Elokim, this place will be the site of the house of Hashem, and it's the gateway to heaven. What did Yaakov dream about? A ladder. B'hinei sulam mutzav arza v'rosh magia hashamayim. There was a ladder that was standing on the ground, and it reached the heavens. How does that relate to Beis Hamikdash? Because if we imagine these stairs of the Beis Hamikdash, it's that ladder that is taking us from being in the ground, being in a very worldly, earthy experience, being in a very coarse material existence, and trying to raise ourselves up to reach the greatest heights of connection with Hashem. That's why the Medrash also says it, that the sulam, the ladder of Yaakov's dream, is davening. Davening is a sulam. Because when we daven in the morning, when we wake up in the morning, we're very in touch with our physical body. That's the first sensation and experience that we have, is our physicality. We're arta. We're down here in the ground. And what we do, tefillah, is for Lashon Tofel, to connect. We need to connect ourselves, not only connect ourselves to Hashem, but get in touch with the deeper core of our own neshama. This is a process where we're supposed to climb through the various paths, the rungs of this ladder, to connect us deeper to Hashem and get of the comments with regards to the Beis Hamikdash. And the highest level, of course, being the essence. That being the case, why were there no stairs leading from the Kodesh to the Kodesh Hakodoshim? There were stairs as you went from the courtyard or the Ezra's Nahum, the Kodesh, there were stairs which represent how you're climbing higher and higher. Entering the Kodesh Hakodoshim is the greatest of all aliyahs. It's the greatest of all elevations, where we're touching the very essence of the neshama. Why are there no stairs to take us there? Okay, so that's a great explanation. It's not about us, so to speak. It's about Hashem coming down to us. I'll share with you the explanation that the Rebbe gives. And the Rebbe says, when we talk about stairs, true, stairs represent the idea of an elevation. But the moment you can encapsulate an elevation in terms of stairs, it means that there's a finite gap. You take this many stairs and you'll get there. You climb this high and you will get there. It's something which is quantifiable. It's something which is measurable. It's something which can be scaled. And that may be true when we talk about graduating from the lower levels of our neshama to higher levels of the neshama. It may be true when we talk about going from our nefesh to our ruach to our neshama, neshama to the chai. It may be true when we talk about serving Hashem in the mundane to now elevating into Shabbos, as we spoke about at the end of last week's year, that we lift ourselves up to come into Shabbos. But that elevation into Shabbos relative to the chol is somewhat quantifiable. But then you have what we call an aliyah be'ein aroich. We have this infinite jump, this infinite leap. When we talk about entering the Kodesh Hakodoshim, when we talk about touching the very essence of the soul, which is one with the essence of Hashem, that's not something which is measurable. That's not something which fits on any scale whatsoever. It's an infinite jump. So therefore, if there were to be stairs, how many stairs do you put? How many stairs take you to infinity? It's not something which is measurable. It's not something which is quantifiable. And therefore, to put any stairs would not be doing justice. It would be limiting the elevation of the Kodesh Hakodoshim. So therefore, there were no stairs leading there. But it was not because it was less holy or the same holy as the Kodesh. It's because it was an entirely different league of connection to Hashem altogether. And that represents the Yechidah, represents the essence of the Neshama. The Alter Rebbe in Tanya, in the last few prakim of Sefer Shel Beinanim, talks about the revelation of godliness in the Kodesh Hakodoshim. And this really goes back to one of the analogies that we gave based on the teachings of the Alter Rebbe, that the three zones of the Beis Hamikdash correspond to the three primary organs that are drivers or controllers within a person. We have our moyach, the brain, we have our lev, the heart, and we have the kaved, the liver or the gut, which is really the source of our instincts and our actions, our base primary type of drives. The azara, the courtyard, corresponds to the liver. The kodesh corresponds to the heart, and the Kodesh Hakodoshim, says the Alter Rebbe, corresponds to the brain. When we talk about the body, we don't need to explain at length about how integral the brain is. The brain is effectively the powerhouse of the body. It's the source of, it's where the neshama rests. As the Alter Rebbe says early in Tanya, the neshama rests primarily in the brain, and from there its influence goes to the rest of the body. So the Alter Rebbe in the last few chapters of Tanya, starting from Perek Nun Aleph, Perek Nun, I should say, the Alter Rebbe is talking about Nun Aleph, about the Ashras HaShechina in the base Kodesh HaKadoshim. The Alter Rebbe is discussing the way the Shechina rested within the and that we know that Hashem is everywhere. So what does it mean that the Shekhinah rested in the Holy of Holies more so than anywhere else in the world? And the Alter Rebbe draws on the analogy of the relationship between the brain and all of the other limbs of the body. It's true. The neshama is present in every part of our body. The fact that we're alive, the fact that our body lives and can move and can function is because the neshama is present there. But the greatest concentration, the greatest revelation is in the brain. And from there, it becomes revealed to the rest of the world. And Alter Rebbe goes on to describe how the highest levels of godliness come down into our world, into the Kodesh Hakodoshim, and then from there to the rest of the world. And actually explains how just like the brain really includes the entire body within it. The power of sight is in the brain. The power of hearing is in the brain. The power of movement is in the brain. Everything is controlled by the brain. So too, all of existence is bound up with the Kodesh Hakodoshim. And that's why the Even Hashsia, the stone which stood in the Kodesh Hakodoshim, was the stone from which the entire world was created. Because just like the brain, like the DNA includes with it, everything will then develop into the child subsequently, or all the other. To the godliness of the Kodesh Hakodoshim is the source of everything. What happened to the Aron? So let's come back to the idea that the Aron was hidden. There's a sikha from the Rebbe where the Rebbe explains that the Rambam, in his work, which is supposed to be the halachas of the Beis Hamikdash, describes how the Aron was hidden in these windy tunnels beneath the Harabais. And the Rebbe asks, why does the Rambam actually tell us these details? It seems more like a historical account. They saw the Beis Hamikdash was going to be destroyed. They took the Aron, they hid it underneath. Why do I need to know this in the halachas of building the Beis Hamikdash? And the Rebbe basically explains that you cannot have a Beis Hamikdash without an Aron. You can't. Like the Ramban says, that the primary vessel of the Beis Hamikdash was the Aron. That's where the Shekhinah was revealed. That's the essence. It's the nucleus. But the Aron has two places. There's its place in the Kodesh Hakodoshim, and then there's its place which is hidden beneath the ground. And in the first Beis Hamikdash, the Kohen Gadol would go in and he would bring the Ketores, and he would see the Aron and place the Ketores down between the poles of the Aron and burn the incense, and it would go up. And in the second Beis Hamikdash, there was no Aron. He would place it on the Even Hashsia, on the stone. But the Aron was there. It was hidden. You couldn't see it, but it's there. When we look at every Jew, when we look at every Jewish person without distinction, the Aron is there. Sometimes you see it. Sometimes you could see a person, and the Aron which we describe as their pintaliyid. Sometimes you could see their connection to Hashem, their oneness with Hashem, their belief in Hashem, their emunah, in a revealed way. You see a Jew and that they're connected to Hashem through the observance of Torah and mitzvahs. It's there, it's revealed. Sometimes you look and you see an empty space. Sometimes you look at a Jew and you see that there's this void. You don't see any outward expression of their Jewishness whatsoever. And sometimes they're deliberately trying to bury and to hide it, but it's always there. And unfortunately, it often only comes out in difficult times. You know, Pasuk says, "Ma'ovai techakmeni." David HaMelech says, "Make me wiser than my enemies." But the Mefarshim explain that this can also be read as "Make me wise from my enemies," which means that we can learn from everybody. So we go back 300 days ago to the terrible massacre that happened in Eretz Yisrael, and you think, what can we learn from such barbaric? I don't know if you can even call them human beings. What can we learn? What we can learn is that to them, a Jew is a Jew. You could be dancing at a rave party on Simchas Torah. No one's asking how long it took to walk there. But they're the same as the Jew in the shul in Har Nof. Makes no difference to them. A Jew is a Jew. It doesn't matter about the outward expression. It doesn't matter. They didn't ask you how many pairs of tefillin did you put on, how many times a day do you daven, which after do you eat. You're Jewish, that's it. There's no distinction. The way in the aftermath of that massacre, that's how we started to see one another. You saw how Klal Yisrael came together, and you saw religious and non-religious working together for the same cause, right? And you saw this achdus that was unprecedented, because achdus is hard. Let's face it. But that's only when we're dealing in the peripheries. When we're dealing with the peripheries, which is about what you do and how you dress, and your Torah study and your kehillah, etc. There's all the reasons in the world that we're not united. But when you come down to the very essence, and it's like a family, we go back to the analogy of a child, right? So you have siblings, right? You have siblings. And if I were to choose my sibling as a friend, I would probably never, because we're just so different. We've got nothing in common. We've got nothing. But we've got the same DNA. And therefore we have everything in common. But sometimes that's buried. And so sometimes when we look, we don't see it, and we don't focus on it. We don't focus on that bond, as the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, that is the way to really have v'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha. Because if we have this perspective, then they are kamoicha. They are me and I am them. Because we all have the same essence. The essence is the same everywhere and in everyone. Because a Jew is a Jew no matter what. And that's why one of the times when we talk about the revelation of the essence of the soul is when a Jew dies al Kiddush Hashem. When a Jew loses their life or sacrifices their life because they are a Jew and for no other reason, and those who are martyrs and give up their lives for their Jewishness are called Kodesh Hakodoshim, the Holy of Holies. Because in that moment, the very essence, and it doesn't matter, no matter what the rest of their life may have been, in that moment, they are dying for no other reason other than the fact they are Jew and they are bound up with Hashem and cannot become separated from Hashem. It's there. It may be buried under layers of rubble and layers of rock, etc., but it's there. And it's indestructible. It's not something that can be changed. It's something which, like the luchos, is carved into the very fabric of their being. When we look at this idea of the essence, the Aron being and the Kodesh Hakodoshim reflecting the essence, Chazal tell us a fascinating detail. Ha'aron eina min hamida. This is an idea which is brought in Chassidus as well. It means that the Aron did not take up space. The Aron had very finite measurements. It was 2.5 amos by 1.5 amos by 1.5 amos. It had very finite measurements as detailed in the Torah. It stood in the Kodesh Hakodoshim, and therefore we would assume by all laws of logic, it would take up space. Yet, as I said, the Kodesh Hakodoshim was 20 amos. When you would measure from the wall to the Aron, it would be 10 amos. And from the other side of the Aron to the next wall would be 10 amos. And if you measure from the side to the Aron, it would be 10 amos. And if you measure from the other side of the Aron to the 10 amos. Aron eina min hamida, didn't take up space. How can we have this idea that on one hand, the Aron had finite measurements, but was not bound by those measurements? That power to transcend paradox and be completely unlimited is a power that only Hashem himself has. Everything in this world is limited by measurements, by time, by laws of physics and nature, etc. Only Hashem is completely unbound. And because the Kodesh HaKadoshim was the place where Hashem's very essence was revealed, it was completely unlimited, and therefore you could have the measurements, but they didn't exist. They didn't really exist. And that's true with regards to a Jew. Because we are bound up with Hashem, we have the same infinite power. And therefore, the Lashon which Chassidus uses, nimna and nimnois, you can't say anything is impossible for us. You can't say anything is impossible. Just some really concluding ideas to really bring this to full circle, I guess, bring this to its close, is that we have different stages of our lives, and at different times of our lives, we experience different levels of anashama, and we perform different types of service of Hashem. And all are important. Just like every detail of the Beis Hamikdash was integral, every detail of the Beis Hamikdash had to be there, had to have its materials, had to have its measurements in all of its details to be valid. Each aspect of our divine service is important. And just because we say the essence of a Jew is bound up with the essence of Hashem, and he will love us no matter what, doesn't mean that our Torah and mitzvahs are not valuable. They are 100% valuable, and they're an important part of building the world into a Mishkan, building ourselves into Mishkan, and building our homes into the Mishkan. So we have the Azara, the courtyard, which is our involvement with the world, the way we live our lives within this world as Jews, which means everything we do is for a godly purpose. Everything we do is about taking that which may not be holy, may not have a godly consciousness to it, and making it holy, making it connected to Hashem. And that may be through the kavanah, that when we eat, it's in order to have energy to be able to serve Hashem. When we work, it's to have parnasa, to be able to educate our children in the ways of Torah and mitzvahs. Everything is infused with a godly purpose. We work on our own animalistic selves, if it's our negative character traits of jealousy, selfishness, arrogance, lust, etc., to try and make them less animalistic and more elevated, which is the avoid of the karbonos. Then we have our Shabbos experiences. We have our spiritual activities that we do. And in fact, whenever a Jew does a mitzvah, whenever a Jew davens, that's like a micro experience of Shabbos. We're lifting ourselves up. We're touching a deeper level of our neshama than just our external interactions with the world around us. And that's important. We have to have regular, which means to nourish the mitzvahs we do, and we need as well. And from time to time, and again, it's really about, if you look at it in terms of the time of the work that was done in the Beis Hamikdash, how many moments in our lives can we actually say we touch our essence? We experience our essence. Few and far between. Few and far between. It's there, but few and far between, like the Yom Kippur, which is a 1 day a year. But that 1 day should affect everything else that we do the rest of the year. Then we have our Kodesh, our mitzvahs, davening, Torah learning. It's more, but it's still not most of our lives. Most of our lives were kind of in the courtyard. But what we need to try and do is to elevate ourselves, to climb that ladder as much as we are able to do, and to try and connect to Hashem on deeper levels, that Hashem rests within us. As the Navi says, Heichal Hashem Hema, that the Jewish people are the Heichal of Hashem. The Jewish people are the resting place of the Shekhinah. And what we need to do, and just this will conclude this year, we're coming up to Tisha B'Av. And there's a Gemara in Masechta Yuma, which discusses something which happened at the times of the Churban. It's not clear. It's presumably the first Beis Hamikdash was being destroyed. The non-Jews who were destroying the temple went into the Kodesh Hakodoshim, and they saw the Kruvim. Now, this can't be the Kruvim in the Aron, because the Aron had been hidden. It was other Kruvim that were there. And we know that the Kruvim were a representation of a relationship with Hashem and the Jewish people. When the Jewish people were doing Ritzoyne Shemaka and were doing what Hashem wanted, the Kruvim faced each other. When the Jewish people were not doing what Hashem wants, the Kruvim were facing away from another. When the Beis Hamikdash was being destroyed, it was being destroyed, the first Beis Hamikdash, for Avodah Zarah, idolatry, Gilui Arayos, immorality, and Shvichus Damim, murder. We're talking about the worst averos possible. We're talking about a denial of Hashem, cutting off our relationship with Hashem. How would you imagine the Kruvim would be at that time? You would think completely facing one another. The Gemara tells us not only were the Kruvim facing one another, they were actually intertwined like a man and a woman. Cheder HaMitos, Basar Echad. They were completely united as one. And why was that possible? They were embracing one another. How is that possible at this time when the Jewish people had sinned? They reached the deepest level of corruption, right? Because when you cut through all of the layers, at the end of the day, no matter how sinful the Jewish people were, and Hashem had to destroy the Beis Hamikdash and send the Jewish people into exile. But like a parent who has to discipline the child, at that moment of, so to speak, separation, that deepest love was revealed. That deepest love was revealed in that moment, and therefore the Kruvim were embracing one another in a deeper level than they ever had until that time. Says the Bnei Yissaschar that we know that Tisha B'Av is the birth of Mashiach. Bnei Yissaschar says that Mashiach's soul is brought into this world from the union of Hashem and the Jewish people. And the greater the strength of that union and connection, that's how we draw down this lofty soul of Mashiach. And therefore, he says it was specifically on Tisha B'Av, at a time where if you wanted to talk about a surface level relationship, about what you do, what you don't do, how you're doing in your avoid of refining your animalistic soul or engaging within the physicality of the world or your Torah study or your mitzvahs or your davening, there was none of that. That was all completely destroyed. That was all completely corrupted. What was left? The essence of that core relationship that's inseverable and incorruptible that Hashem has with the Jewish people, that we are him and he is us. And that union is what gave birth to the neshama of Mashiach. But just like a pregnancy, that after conception, the baby, like the Aron, is hidden, and we're waiting for the baby to emerge, So throughout the time of Galus, the soul of Mashiach is there, because the essence of the Jewish soul is, the Mashiach is the collective essence of all of the Jewish souls together. It's there, but it's like a pregnancy. And that's why Geula, redemption, is likened to birth, when you go from a state of concealment into a state of revelation. So should we be zoicha that through us rebuilding and repairing our own inner Beis Hamikdash, that will bring about the rebuilding of the third Beis Hamikdash, and then we'll be able to have the restoration of the Aron, not from the way it is underneath the ground, but revealed in its place, because at that time the Aron of every Jew is going to be revealed. It will no longer be hidden. Every Jew will come to a recognition of Hashem and will live in accordance with that essential bond that we have for Hashem. And that's why the third Beis Hamikdash will be eternal, because the essence of our connection with Hashem is eternal. And we should be zoicha be'ezras Hashem to be able to go back to Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh, in safety, in security, and to have this eternal bond with Hashem.
Very long pregnancy.
It's been too long, way overdue, way overdue. Time to induce.
Yashikaya, very much. Thank you very much. I think there would have been quite a few people upon the chat on Zoom.
I think, yes, I think so.
Zoom link.